inside.
For clothes that twist and long. At Bold 3 Detergent Plus Fabric Softener.
I made a store just for me.
Your food was disgusting.
Hey-aw! It's been a while since I've made a video. I've been busy trying to recover from Witchtober, and I noticed that it's been a few days since I've posted anything about the Witchborn comic or any of the pages that I've been working on, so I thought this would be a good time to work on a Witchborn page on camera. I've been really busy recently working on a bunch of different projects and figuring out a new posting schedule that won't break my wrists, but now I'm ready to get back into it, so today I'm going to show off a bit of the inking process of this page while I talk a bit about paneling. This is a topic that I brought up a few videos ago, and that video had a ton of great response and even more awesome questions about how to format panels or how to know how many panels to go on a comic book page. So I decided to break down some of those questions into this video. I'm not going to get to them all, and I'm definitely not going to say that this is the only video that I'm going to do on this topic, but let's go ahead and get into talking about messy panels and what to do and not to do with them. Here are 4 things to keep your panels clean and easy to read for your comic book, webcomic, or manga. A lot of times when you're drawing out your comic, manga, webcomic, whatever you're working on or whatever you call it, you'll get really excited by all the ideas you have and then realize how difficult it is to cram all of them onto one page, let alone cramming all those ideas in small boxes. So often you'll find yourself cramming as many panels as possible into a page or a scene, and you'll find there's way too much going on and no one can understand what's happening. There's a couple of issues going on here, but let's address one of the main ones. Too many ideas on too little of the page. I often struggle with this because I want to tell the audience so much about what's going on in my world, so much that is happening in the scene, all the little details, all the little bits and pieces that will foreshadow all the cool stuff that I have in the rest of the story. All these things are great to add to your story as they bring out elements that will engage the reader, but you can't just overwhelm your reader with 1 million different things all happening at once. You have to be concise. Let's say you have a comic with 25 pages. That's about the standard size for a comic. You already know how it's going to go, you have the general script figured out, but you need to plot out what the scenes will be. I usually like to plan out my scenes in a series of 2 to 3 pages and try to dedicate only one topic per page. So let's say I have a scene where a character meets another character. So we need to establish where we are and how those characters know each other. Okay, that's page 1. Then we have a scene where they discuss a topic and each of them reacts to that topic. That's page 2. And then let's just say for fun there's a disagreement and there's a heated argument on page 3.
Let them fight.
With these 3 pages we have our entire scene figured out. But let's break this down even further. Page 1. We need to know where we are and who's there. So let's draw a big panel with a landscape, or the outside of a building, or wherever these 2 characters are meeting. We want to establish the scenery. Whatever you're drawing for this initial shot, you want to make sure that it's recognizable and someplace that will remain in the background of the scene where these 2 characters are meeting. Maybe you could even show a vehicle or means of transportation to show one of these characters arriving, which will add a bit of depth to your scene and even a bit of intrigue as to who this character is and where they're standing, whether they show up on a unicorn or a limousine or on an asteroid from space. I don't know. It's up to you, but it helps establish the scene and the tone with this first big panel. For the next couple panels, we need to establish how these characters know each other, or if there's a new character, we need to establish who that character is with an introductory panel. That's usually 2 or 3 panels of dialogue back and forth between the 2 characters, showing their expressions and maybe a bit of their body language to establish if they like each other, if they hate each other, maybe they're a little bit nervous about this meeting, but either way you can establish that in say 2 to 3 panels. So that puts us at about 5 panels for page 1. How did I determine that? Well, for one, a lot of study into comics, and that's pretty much the answer to any questions you have regarding how to do whatever for comics or manga. But let's not spoil the ending. The main answer for this point is that I broke down my ideas of what I need in that scene, and then I broke it down even further into how many pages it might take me. I may add more or remove some pages depending on how I feel the scene should go, but I only want to dedicate 1 or 2 ideas per page, and then use paneling to emphasize those small things in those pages that communicate that idea. I'm only going to focus on what I want the reader to understand from this specific scene, and then move on to the next scene, and the next, and well, you get it. Moving on to the next part. This is one that I struggle with almost every time I sit down to draw. I have trouble writing out my scripts and then drawing them out. What I usually do is I just have the story already in my head and just draw out the entire comic page by page and then write the script. This is not the best way to work as a note. It's really kind of messy, and especially if you're working with a writer or somebody else in the comic book process, it can be very confusing for them, so please don't be like me. This way of working allows me to have visuals very early on as I'm writing, which is great for me because I'm a very visual person and can't really see things through words or scripts. However, since I can already see the story that I have in mind on page, I often neglect to polish up my drawings, pushing them back to the next stage and hoping for the best. This is an absolutely terrible habit, and you cannot, please don't follow my footsteps there. Way too often, I expect that the inking stage or the coloring stage will make a scene clear, or make a panel look great, or just push it to the next step. But if I don't nail it in the early stages from the get-go, that scene is just not going to make sense later. I'm just polishing a turd if I keep putting off adding the details, or drawing all the fingers on a hand, or making sure that the poses make sense. I know this sounds like it's totally stupid, and maybe it doesn't make sense to you, and maybe you don't have this problem, but when you're knee-deep in comic book pages, sometimes you just want to move on to something else. This is why I have to slow down and pace myself. I really have to take time to double check and force myself to think through the poses, emotions, and character designs in each and every panel. A lot of times this is why I don't sit down and just do one page. Eventually I'll come back to that panel that I was working on and make sure that I fully get it to where it needs to be, and not just wait on future Ruben to deal with the problem. One bad panel can distract your reader and prevent them from enjoying your story, so you really can't just have an off panel or an off day as far as pages go. Every drawing has to make sense, and that's not to say you have to have insane artistic skills or be a master artist or nobody will like your comic or read it, but you do have to make sure that what's happening in the panel is cohesive with the rest of your story and clear to your reader. If someone is running down a hall in one panel and then suddenly is sprawled out on the floor for no reason because you forgot to draw what they tripped on, you're the one that's going to be kicking yourself, trust me. This one's definitely bigger than this video can handle, and I promise I'll make another video that will cover this topic a bit more. I hesitate to say I can cover it in just one video. It might turn into a series because this is a really big subject, but anyway, let's move on.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Move on.
For now, let me just touch on the subject of how messy panels come to be from a basic misunderstanding of what a comic panel actually is or what it could be. A lot of times I see amateur comic artists, by the way, I still consider myself an amateur comic artist, I'm in no way a professional, take everything I say with a grain of salt, break down a scene in just a bunch of even square boxes across a page, because that's how they think paneling works, and sometimes that's all a scene needs, and sometimes it does actually work. I'm not trying to say that's wrong, but if you start to look at other comic books, or manga, or graphic novels, or even sometimes the funny pages, you'll notice that paneling can really be done with anything. Circles, diagonal lines, other characters or actions or pieces of the scene can frame other parts of the stories and break the panels down to emphasize motion, action, or impact. So it really bugs me sometimes when I see a comic with an awesome story, but it's just so boringly stuck inside small, uninteresting square boxes. They just feel so restrictive and not interesting to read. That's why I suggest trying out as many compositions as you can before drawing the final page. And now I'm going to open up a bigger can of worms that I won't fully be able to explain in this video, but I'll try anyway. This video basically is just me promising to make more videos talking about this subject, but I'm all here for it and I hope that you guys are too. Thumbnailing is a great way to test out your page composition without spending hours and hours drawing and redrawing panels to see how they work. If you already have your script and the general idea of what you want to go onto your page, then just take your sketchbook or whatever you use to get ideas out quick and fast and sketch out 4 or 5 different compositions, spending about a minute or 2 on each sketch, really quick and fast stuff. They should be about the size of a post-it note. Don't even stress about the details. I usually do about 4 or 5 of these for each page that I do. I often just grab a couple of comics off my shelf and copy what they have, or even steal panel ideas that I like. And this way I can reimagine the pages as many times as I need to before I'm happy with how the format is. That way I don't wear myself out working on the page until I settle for something because I'm too tired of working. Once you find the thumbnail that you like, sketch it out bigger and try to focus on solidifying exactly where you want those panels to go. and what characters or events will happen in those panels. Then step back and try to see if the composition flows and if it makes sense from a distance. Once you do that, you're ready to start drawing your page, and it's fine if you don't stick to your thumbnails. I often will spend a bunch of time sketching out something only to completely chuck all the drawings and completely redraw the page for something completely and totally what I didn't plan, but it's better that way. Thumbnailing is at least some way that you can think through your composition without spending a ton of time. We've already talked about how too many panels can clutter a page and make it impossible to read, but who's to say what is too many panels or too few panels? Well, there's some good guidelines that you'll find from comic book artists that usually say the number of panels you can have on a page that can vary from about 1 to 9 panels. But sometimes that rule is broken. In fact, here's a bit from Gideon Falls that has 38 panels across 2 pages, and the scene really worked. So why doesn't it feel cluttered? Why did the artist decide to panel it this way? And how do you determine how many panels is too much or too little? This is kind of a scene-by-scene problem, but I'll try to break it down for you. There is no right or wrong answer for each page that you're going to be working on in your story. It's up to you to determine exactly how many panels are needed on a page and in what order they appear. This takes time and experience and a lot of study, so I just find in comics that have paneling that is interesting to you. Try to look for something that captures your interest and fully immerses you in the comic because of how it's laid out. Some of the things that I've learned to observe while reading comics is how the artist breaks down a scene and how he uses his medium to let us know what's happening in that scene. For example, the bus scene here from Gideon Falls is a flashback of an important revelation to a character. The artist probably really wanted us to focus in on this seemingly mundane bus, breaking it apart into little tiny fragments that our eyes linger on. This also enhances the idea of the story that this is a memory that the character maybe only remembers in fragments, and so the paneling really brings this idea home. Meanwhile, the scene that I'm working on right now is a fight scene, so generally I'm going to only have a few panels per page to make things look like they're happening quicker, and the reader can flip through this section quickly as the story picks up its pace. A general rule of thumb is the more panels that you have on a page, the slower that scene is, because it will take the reader longer to read that page, whereas the less panels there are in a scene, the quicker things happen. Again, this is not a hard and fast rule, as sometimes 4 panels can show a long amount of time passing, or a bunch of panels can show a million details in a fight that's all happening at once. Like I said, there's no real right answer to any of these problems, so you're going to have to figure it out as you go. So I I can't encourage you enough, go out there, read other comics that you like, and make sure to try to observe what makes those comics interesting and why the way they tell their story is so neat to you. Anyway, hopefully if you employ these practices, your paneling in your comic will be more clear and easy to read for your viewers. Make sure to keep studying comics, graphic novels, manga, anything you can get your hands on that will show you all the various and unique ways to break down a scene to tell your story. I'll definitely be making more of these videos about paneling and other comic related subjects, but for now I think we can call this one done. Thanks for watching, be sure to subscribe, now go out there and make something awesome.
Give me a mountain and nothing to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and smooth, refreshing mountain dew.